You ever see a brand name on some budget product and it just stops you for a second? You think, wait a minute, didn't they used to be legendary? It's a weird feeling, right? Seeing a name that once meant obsessive, no compromise quality just slapped on something that feels, well, disposable. Today, that's exactly what we're digging into. We're going to unpack the story of a brand that built hi fi gear so tough it could probably survive a nuclear blast, and how that same name ended up on TVs sold in flimsy cardboard boxes in India.
And really, this question is the whole ballgame. It's the heart of our story. Because this isn't just about one company. It's about what happens when a brand loses its soul. It's about the brutal, unforgiving world of consumer electronics. And it's about the huge difference between actually building something and just licensing a logo. All right, let's get into it. To really understand the fall, you first have to appreciate the peak. And we're about to see just how stark, how almost unbelievable the contrast is between the Sansui that was and the Sansui we see today. I want you to picture it. It's the 1970s. Sansui wasn't just a brand, it was a statement. Their equipment was famous for being overbuilt. And I mean seriously overbuilt. We're talking heavy steel chassis, massive transformers. Even the volume knob had this perfect weighted feel to it. The engineers who designed this stuff, they cared more about your ears than they did about their production budget. This was a promise, etched in brushed aluminum, that was built to last forever. Okay, now let's jump forward to today's Indian market. A complete 180. The Sansui name is mostly found online, on budget TVs and appliances. That promise of forever has been replaced by the very real expectation of maybe a 3-year lifespan. The legend has become a logo. It's a recognition shortcut, mainly for older folks who kind of remember that the name used to mean something more. It's a shocking transformation. So how on earth did we get here? To understand Sansui's journey in India, we've got to go back in time. We need to look at the late 1990s, which was a totally different universe for the Indian electronics market. It was, you could say, a golden age for the local brands. And what's just incredible here is how dominant the local players were. Look at this. In 98 and 99, Indian brands held a staggering 50% of the color TV market. Think about that. That's not a niche. That's half the entire market. They owned their home turf, and they were successfully fending off giants from Japan, Korea, and Europe. And the names at the top of the food chain, they weren't Sony or Panasonic. They were BPL, Videocon, and Onida. And check out BPL. It wasn't just a market leader. Consumers saw it as the ideal brand. Nearly half of all buyers were seriously considering a BPL television. These weren't just companies, these were household names, you know? They were woven into the very fabric of Indian life. So what was actually driving those buying decisions? Well, it wasn't just about price tags or flashy features. The number one thing was trust. A full 40% of buyers said company reputation was key. And the local dealer? Incredibly influential. People cared if the TV was at their favorite dealer, and they listened to what that dealer recommended. This was a market built on relationships and reliability, not just specs on a box. Okay, so if the market valued reputation so highly, how could a brand with a legendary reputation like Sansui's fall so hard so fast? Well, this brings us to the core of the story, a pattern of really bad decisions that created a brand death spiral, not just for Sansui, but for a lot of others too. For Sansui, the collapse started way before its name ever showed up on a TV in India. Back in 1982, their brilliant engineers, so proud of their analog work, just dismissed the CD. They called it a trend. That was a fatal mistake. By 86, sales were hurting, so they did the one thing you should never do. They started cutting costs. They compromised that overbuilt quality that was their entire identity. By 1990, they were stuck. They weren't premium anymore, but they weren't cheap either, and the final nail in the coffin came in 1995, when a conglomerate bought them, not for their engineering prowess, but just for their name. And this is the ultimate tragedy of it all, isn't it? When you strip away the quality, the engineering, the whole philosophy, what do you have left? Just a name, a ghost. The brand became a hollow shell, its only value being that people recognized the logo, ready to be licensed out to whoever wanted to pay for it. What's really powerful, though, is that this isn't just Sansui's story. It's a pattern. The exact same thing played out decades later with Indian smartphone brands. Remember the 2010s? Brands like Micromax were on top of the world. But then they stopped investing in their own R&D, they started just rebranding Chinese phones, and their after-sales service tanked, destroying consumer trust. It's the same mistakes all over again. They stopped innovating, they broke their promise, and they lost the trust they had built. It's the same death spiral. So after all that, what's the takeaway? This story isn't just a piece of business history. It's a series of powerful, timeless lessons for absolutely anyone trying to build something that actually lasts. Lesson 1, quality isn't just a feature. It is the entire argument. The second you start cutting it to compete on price, you've already lost. 2, your biggest fans can actually be your biggest blind spot. Sansui listened to the analog diehards and completely missed the digital revolution the rest of the world was jumping on. 3, pride has to be humble. Their engineers were right about some of the CD's flaws, sure, but they were dead wrong about the market, and their pride just wouldn't let them adapt. 4, a brand is a promise. It's built on trust. You can't just sell the logo and expect the trust to magically transfer over. And finally, and I think this is the most beautiful part, great work survives. The company is gone, a memory. But those overbuilt 1970s amplifiers, they are still out there, being used, being restored, and being absolutely loved today. So just think about that for a second. The logo was sold off, the factories were closed, the company just vanished. But the work, the actual tangible things they built back when they cared, those things are still filling rooms with music, 50 years later. It really forces you to ask a pretty fundamental question. In a world full of disposable products and licensed logos, what does that tell us about what is truly worth building?